The 1983 United States of America quarter dollar, widely recognized as one of the more interesting modern Washington quarters for collectors, carries the familiar obverse portrait of George Washington, originally sculpted by John Flanagan and first introduced in 1932 to commemorate the 200th anniversary of Washington's birth. The coin features the inscriptions Liberty above Washington's head and In God We Trust placed to the left of the bust, while the date 1983 anchors the bottom of the design, with the P mint mark standing just beside the ribbon of Washington's ponytail to indicate production at the Philadelphia Mint. On the reverse is the classic heraldic eagle, also by Flanagan, displayed with outstretched wings, clutching a bundle of arrows that symbolize preparedness for defense and resting on an olive branch that signifies the nation's desire for peace, surrounded above by the motto, E pluribus unum, and framed at the edges by United States of America and quarter dollar. The 1983 quarter is especially notable because the early 1980s were a turbulent period in U.S. coin production. The mint was dealing with cost pressures, changes in metal supply, and high circulation demand, leading to many coins being struck under less than ideal conditions, and this particular year produced quarters that are often encountered in circulation with weak strikes, poor luster, or heavily abraded surfaces, because the mint did not release mint sets in 1982 or 1983, making high-grade examples harder to find today. As a result, truly pristine, uncirculated 1983 quarters, especially those that grade MS 65, MS 66, or above, command a premium among collectors, partly because they were rarely saved at the time and partly because Philadelphia-struck coins from this era often show production flaws, including weak details in Washington's hair, flat eagle wing feathers, or dull strike areas caused by overstressed dies. There are also several interesting error varieties sought by specialists, including off-center strikes, clipped planchets, die cracks, rotated dies, and occasionally struck through debris errors, each of which can significantly increase collector value depending on severity and visual appeal. Compositionally, the 1983 quarter follows the standard clad structure introduced in 1965, an outer layer of 75% copper and 25% nickel bonded to a pure copper core, producing a coin weighing 5.67 grams with a 24.3 millimeters diameter and a reeded edge. And because clad coins of the early 1980s often experience planchet quality issues, surface imperfections are common. Numismatically, the 1983 quarter has become an important coin for those who study the Washington series because it represents a perfect storm of high circulation where lower quality minting and the absence of government-issued mint sets, which collectively created a modern rarity in high condition. While circulated examples are abundant and generally worth face value, sharply struck, brilliant, untouched pieces are scarce and increasingly desirable as more collectors build complete Dayton mint mark sets. For enthusiasts who appreciate coins with historical context, the 1983 quarter also captures a moment in American monetary history when the mint was transitioning from the economic volatility of the 1970s toward the more modern, high-quality production standards of later decades, and because so few people in 1983 thought to save rolls or bags of fresh quarters. Today's collectors sometimes find it surprisingly challenging to locate fully lustrous, mark-free pieces. Overall, the 1983 Washington quarter is far more than a common circulation coin. It is a historically interesting, condition-scarce issue whose inscriptions, Liberty, Indiana God We Trust, and E pluribus unum, reflect both the ideological roots of the United States and the practical realities of minting coinage during a demanding economic period, making it a fascinating subject for numismatists, historians, and everyday collectors who are drawn to the stories behind the coins that pass through our hands. Next top. The 1984 United States of America quarter dollar, minted at the Denver Mint as indicated by the bold D mint mark to the right of George Washington's ponytail on the obverse, is part of the long-running Washington quarter series that began in 1932 to honor the 200th anniversary of Washington's birth. Featuring John Flanagan's sculpted portrait of the first president and carrying the inscriptions Liberty prominently above his head and In God We Trust to the left of his profile, with the Date 1984 anchoring the bottom of the design. On the reverse, Flanagan majestic heraldic eagle spreads its wings above a bundle of arrows symbolizing national readiness and strength, resting on an olive branch that represents America's desire for peace, together framed by the inscriptions, United States of America, E pluribus unum, and quarter dollar, maintaining the symbolic blend of unity and authority that had defined American coinage for decades. The 1984 D quarter comes from a period when the Denver Mint was producing large quantities of circulating coinage to meet growing national demand, resulting in many coins with strong but sometimes inconsistent strikes due to heavy use of dies. And although the mint employed modern machinery and high-pressure striking technology, the sheer volume of production meant that details in Washington's hair, the eagle's feathers, and the surface luster varied significantly, making sharply struck examples more attractive to collectors. Compositionally, like all U.S. quarters minted since 1965, the 1984 D quarter uses a copper-nickel-clad structure consisting of outer layers of 75% copper and 25% nickel bonded to a pure copper core, giving the coin a distinctive silvery color, a weight of 5.67 grams, a diameter of 24.3 millimeters, and a reeded edge designed to prevent tampering and ensure uniformity. The clad composition of the early 1980s is known for sometimes showing imperfections, such as uneven lamination, planchet streaks, or incomplete bonding, which occasionally produced visually interesting but unofficial minor errors that numismatists sometimes collect. The Denver Mint in the 1980s generally had a reputation for producing quarters with better strikes and sharper details than those from Philadelphia, but even so, high-grade 1984 D quarters, especially in grades MS 65, MS 66, and above, remain challenging to locate without contact marks, abrasions from high-speed counting machines, or dull patches from circulation storage. Because quarters during this period were workhorse coins intended primarily for everyday commerce rather than collecting. While most 1984 D quarters found today are worth face value in circulated condition, uncirculated specimens with full luster and clean fields can be worth considerably more due to the difficulties in finding coins preserved since the year of issue, especially because most Americans did not set aside fresh rolls or mint bags during the mid-1980s unless they were dedicated hobbyists. Error collectors also seek special varieties from this year, including off-center strikes, broad strikes, clipped planchets, die cracks, weak strikes, struck-through grease errors, and occasionally rotated dies, all of which vary in value depending on rarity and visual impact. Die cracks around Washington's portrait or in the eagle's wings are among the more commonly encountered anomalies, often forming raised lines that indicate stress fractures in heavily used dies. Historically, the 1984 D quarter sits in a transitional moment in U.S. coin production when the mint was refining techniques that would eventually lead to the higher quality strikes of the 1990s and 2000s, and yet the 1984 issue still reflects many of the characteristics of earlier 1980s circulation coins, namely heavy use, high abrasions, and inconsistent metal quality, giving it significance for collectors who study the evolution of minting technology. For those assembling complete Washington quarter sets, the 1984 D is an important link in the series, providing both a snapshot of modern minting challenges and a representation of how everyday coins encapsulate national identity through inscriptions such as Liberty, Indiana God We Trust, and E pluribus unum. These words echo American ideals, while the coin itself serves as a tangible piece of the country's economic and cultural landscape. Though common in circulation, the 1984 D quarter becomes far more interesting when studied closely. Its historical context, striking characteristics, error potential, and symbolic design combine to make it a richly meaningful piece of modern numismatic. Next top. The 1985 D United States Washington quarter dollar is part of the long-running Washington quarter series, first introduced in 1932 to commemorate the 200th anniversary of George Washington's birth, though it later became the regular circulating quarter indefinitely. The 1985 D issue represents a mid-1980s production run during a period when the U.S. Mint was striking billions of copper-nickel-clad quarters each year to accommodate the growing needs of commerce. Struck at the Denver Mint, The coin carries the D mint mark, located to the right of Washington's ponytail on the obverse. Like all circulating Washington quarters made from 1965 onward, the 1985 D is composed of a clad structure with an inner core of pure copper and an outer layer of 75% copper and 25% nickel, giving it the familiar silvery appearance and a total weight of 5.67 grams, a diameter of 24.26 millimeters, and a reeded edge consisting of about 119 tiny grooves. On the obverse, the design created by sculptor John Flanagan features a left-facing portrait of George Washington, the first president of the United States. Above the portrait appears the word Liberty, while the motto, "In God We Trust," sits just to the left of Washington's bust, and the date 1985 is centered at the bottom. The reverse bears the classic heraldic eagle, also designed by Flanagan, an American bald eagle with outstretched wings perched upon a bundle of arrows symbolizing strength and readiness, framed below by an olive branch representing peace. Above the eagle arches the long-standing national motto, E pluribus unum, meaning out of many one, followed by the words United States of America at the top rim and quarter dollar at the bottom. As for the context of its creation, the 1985 D quarter was minted in a year with no proof sets issued by the San Francisco Mint. 1985 proofs do exist, but only in small numbers and typically not featuring the Denver mint mark, and circulation quality coins from Denver that year reached well over 500 million pieces, making the 1985 D a common issue in worn grades, but still interesting to collectors who specialize in mint state examples, die varieties, or superior strikes. In circulation, these coins commonly develop dulling on Washington's cheek and hair, flattening on the eagle's breast feathers, and surface scratches from heavy use in vending machines and cash exchanges. While well-worn examples generally hold only face value, high-grade mint state coins, especially MS 66 or MS 67, can be somewhat scarce due to the mint strike quality and the tendency for clad coins to pick up contact marks quickly during the minting and bagging process. Collectors often examine 1985 D quarters for potential die variations, including minor die cracks, extra metal from die chips, weak strikes, and occasional misalignment errors. Though most are minor and not highly valuable, dramatic errors, off-center strikes, clipped planchets, double strikes, or major die breaks can command significantly higher prices among specialized error collectors. The 1985 D is also part of a longer narrative in U.S. coinage history, marking a time before the 50-state quarters program, which began in 1999, radically boosted public interest in quarter designs. Therefore, many 1985 D coins were heavily used in circulation for decades before collectors began paying close attention to earlier modern issues. Because the coin is clad rather than silver, it does not contain precious metal content, though uncirculated or well-preserved examples can still have collectible value. When assessing a specimen, numismatists look at the luster, strike sharpness, particularly on Washington's hair curls and the eagle's tail feathers, surface marks, and overall eye appeal. A fully original, uncleaned, sharply struck, and lustrous 1985 D quarter can stand out among an otherwise common mintage year. Although the coin is readily available, its importance lies in representing the broader story of modern American coinage, the technological capabilities of the Denver Mint in the 1980s, and the long-lasting cultural significance of the Washington portrait and traditional eagle reverse design used for more than 65 years before being replaced by rotating commemorative reverses. For collectors assembling date and mint sets, the 1985 D is a necessary component. For students of U.S. mint history, it highlights the industrial scale of mid-Reagan-era coin production, and for beginning collectors, it serves as an accessible entry into numismatics, offering opportunities to learn about next top. The 1986 P. Washington quarter dollar is a representative example of mid-1980s United States circulating coinage and belongs to the classic Washington quarter series first issued in 1932 to honor the 200th anniversary of George Washington's birth. By 1986, this design, created by sculptor John Flanagan, had already been in continuous use for well over 50 years and was still the standard quarter in every American's pocket before the later introduction of the state quarters program. The 1986 P designation means this coin was minted at the Philadelphia Mint, carrying a small P mint mark located to the right of Washington's ponytail on the obverse. Philadelphia did not consistently use mint marks prior to the early 1980s, so this is one of the relatively early examples where the P appears on a circulating quarter. The coin's obverse features a left-facing portrait of George Washington, with the word Liberty above his head, the motto, "In God We Trust," nestled to the left of his profile, and the date 1986 placed prominently at the bottom. The reverse displays a majestic heraldic eagle, a bald eagle with extended wings, resting on a bundle of arrows symbolizing strength and national defense, while an olive branch beneath the eagle signifies peace. Above the eagle is the historic motto, "E pluribus unum," meaning out of many, one, and encircling the upper rim is United States of America, with quarter dollar at the bottom. Technically, the 1986 P quarter is a copper-nickel-clad coin, not silver, consisting of a pure copper core sandwiched between outer layers made of 75% copper and 25% nickel, giving it the characteristic silvery tone of modern U.S. coinage. It weighs 5.67 grams and has a diameter of 24.26 millimeters, with a reeded edge made up of more than 100 fine grooves that help prevent counterfeiting and discourage the filing of metal from the edges. In terms of production scale, the Philadelphia Mint struck hundreds of millions of 1986 P quarters, making it a common date in circulated condition, but because clad coins from this era often left the mint with numerous bag marks and contact abrasions from high-speed processing, truly exceptional mint state examples, particularly MS 66 and MS 67, are much scarcer than the mintage numbers might suggest. Circulated 1986 P quarters typically exhibit significant wear on Washington's cheekbone, hair curls, and jawline on the obverse, and on the reverse the eagle's breast feathers, wings, and the details of the arrows tend to flatten quickly with use. Light scratches, dulling of luster, and grayish toning are also very common after decades of circulation. As with many 1980s quarters, the 1986 P is sometimes found with minor die cracks, die chips, weak strikes, planchet imperfections, or machine doubling. None of these typically add substantial value unless the error is unusually dramatic, such as an off-center strike, missing clad layer, clipped planchet, or major multiple strike, which can attract strong interest from error coin specialists. The 1986 P quarter holds a particular place in U.S. mint history as part of the pre-state quarter era, when the mint's focus was on sheer production volume rather than artistic redesign, and so these coins were minted primarily to meet the growing demands of cash-based transactions during a period of economic growth in the United States. Though ordinary worn specimens are worth only face value, collectors of modern Washington quarters, especially those building complete Dayton mint mark sets from 1932 to 1998, always include this issue, and they prize sharply struck, uncirculated pieces with clean surfaces and strong luster. When grading a 1986 P, numismatists pay special attention to the hair detail above Washington's ear, the sharpness of the eagle's breast and tail feathers, and the presence or absence of bag marks scattered across the smooth fields. The coin's eye appeal can vary significantly depending on the quality of the original strike and whether the coin has retained its original mint luster or developed unattractive haze from decades of circulation. Even though it is common, the 1986 P quarter is historically significant as part of the long-running Washington design that served the nation for more than 6 decades before any major redesigns occurred. For beginning collectors, it provides an affordable introduction to U.S. numismatics, while for advanced specialists it offers opportunities to study die states, strike characteristics, and minting technology of the late 20th century. Ultimately, the 1986 P Washington quarter stands as a snapshot of American everyday commerce, U.S. mint production practices, and the next top. The 1987 P United States quarter dollar is part of the long-running Washington quarter series, first introduced in 1932 to commemorate the 200th anniversary of George Washington's birth. The P mint mark indicates it was struck at the Philadelphia Mint, which by the 1980s was the country's highest volume producer of circulating coins. Unlike coins made at the Denver or San Francisco mints, Philadelphia coins before 1980 did not use a mint mark, but by 1987 the P had become a standard identifier. The 1987 P quarter continues the classic portrait designed by sculptor John Flanagan, whose depiction of George Washington was based on Jean-Antoine Houdon's famous bust from 1786. On the obverse front of the coin, Washington faces left, with the large word Liberty centered at the top, symbolizing the American founding principle of freedom. Beneath Washington's chin is the motto "In God We Trust," adopted as part of U.S. coin design in the 19th century and formally standardized across all American coinage in the mid-20th century. At the very bottom of the obverse appears the date 1987, indicating the year of minting, and the small letter P, the mint mark of Philadelphia. The reverse back of the 1987 P quarter features the American bald eagle, another element of John Flanagan's original design. The eagle is shown with outstretched wings, perched on a bundle of arrows, a symbol of the country's readiness to defend itself, while below the arrows lies an olive branch, representing peace. Above the eagle arcs the national name United States of America, and below it, in slightly smaller lettering, appears the Latin motto E pluribus unum, which translates to out of many, one. This motto reflects the union of the states into a single nation. At the very bottom of the reverse is the denomination quarter dollar, identifying the coin's face value of 25 cents. The design remained unchanged from 1932 until the start of the 50-state quarters program in 1999, making the 1987 P part of the classic pre-statehood Washington quarters. In terms of composition, the 1987 P Washington quarter is struck in cupronickel-clad copper, a copper core with outer layers of 75% copper and 25% nickel. This clad composition has been standard since 1965, replacing the earlier 90% silver quarters. The total weight of the coin is 5.67 grams, and it measures 24.26 millimeters in diameter with a reeded, grooved edge. Because it is a circulation coin rather than a silver or commemorative issue, its metal value is equal only to its face value, not higher. The Philadelphia Mint produced a very large number of 1987 P quarters, over 500 million. This high mintage means that most examples found today in circulated condition hold only face value, about 25 cents. However, collectors may pay modest premiums for coins in uncirculated condition, especially those that still show their original mint luster. In high mint state grades, MS 65, MS 66, or MS 67, 1987, P quarters can be worth a few dollars to more, depending on the quality and rarity of the grade. Extremely high-end examples graded above MS 67 are scarce because most coins were struck for everyday commerce, not for collectors. Any unusual features such as mint errors, off-center strikes, double denominations, or die cracks can also increase value, though genuine errors must be authenticated by a reputable numismatic expert. Because of its design, the inscriptions on the 1987 P quarter hold symbolic significance beyond simple decoration. Liberty, a Central American ideal, has been included on U.S. coinage since the nation's founding. In God We Trust, first placed on coins during the Civil War, reflects historical and cultural values expressed through national mottos. E pluribus unum, originally chosen for the Great Seal of the United States in 1782, emphasizes unity among diverse states and peoples. Together, these inscriptions represent constitutional ideals, national identity, and the historic evolution of American coin design. As a whole, the 1987 P Washington quarter is a typical example of late 20th century U.S. circulating currency, familiar, widely produced, and meaningful in symbolism, even if modest in monetary value. Next top. The 1989 P United States quarter dollar is part of the classic Washington quarter series, a design that had already been in circulation for 57 years by the time this coin was struck at the Philadelphia Mint, whose mint mark, P, appears to the right of George Washington's ponytail ribbon on the obverse. The Washington quarter was originally introduced in 1932 to honor the 200th anniversary of Washington's birth and its design was created by sculptor John Flanagan, who based the portrait on Jean-Antoine Houdon's historically accurate 18th century bust of Washington. On the obverse, Washington faces left, and above his portrait is the prominent word liberty, a foundational concept in American identity and the single most common inscription on U.S. coinage since the nation's founding. Slightly to the left of Washington's neck is the motto "In God We Trust," added to coins beginning in the 19th century and made mandatory across all denominations in the mid-20th century. This motto reflects the United States' historical expressions of faith and national values through its currency. Beneath the portrait is the year 1989, marking the date of issue, a period when the U.S. Mint was producing very large quantities of circulating coins to meet expanding national commerce. Philadelphia, by 1989, was the principal high-volume minting facility in the country, and its inclusion of the mint mark P, first used on quarters in 1980, helps collectors and historians identify the coin's origin. Turning to the reverse, the coin features the long-standing image of an American bald eagle with wings outspread, perched upon a bundle of arrows and accompanied by an olive branch below, symbols that represent the nation's simultaneous readiness for defense and hope for peace. This imagery had served as the reverse design for all Washington quarters from 1932 until the launch of the 50-state quarters program in 1999. Above the eagle appears the inscription United States of America, and just beneath it is the Latin motto E pluribus unum, meaning out of many one, expressing the unity of the states into a single federal nation. At the bottom of the reverse is the denomination quarter dollar, clearly identifying the value of the coin as 25 cents. The design, while simple, carries a substantial amount of symbolism. Washington as a representation of leadership and virtue, the eagle as a national emblem of strength, the arrows and olive branch conveying a balance between power and peace, and the mottos expressing ideals that shaped American political identity. The composition of the 1989 P quarter is copper-nickel clad, consisting of a pure copper core sandwiched between two outer layers made from an alloy of 75% copper and 25% nickel. This clad composition replaced the earlier 90% silver content in 1965, following changes in U.S. monetary policy, rising silver prices, and the need for a durable, cost-effective coinage metal for mass circulation. The quarter weighs 5.67 grams, has a diameter of 24.26 millimeters, and features a reeded edge, originally intended to prevent shaving or clipping metal from the coin when silver coins were still common, though the tradition continues even on modern clad currency. The Philadelphia Mint struck hundreds of millions of 1989 P quarters, making them common in circulation, and as a result, most examples found in everyday pocket change hold only face value, about 25 cents. However, for collectors, high-grade uncirculated specimens with strong mint luster, clean surfaces, and minimal contact marks can hold modest premiums, especially in grading levels such as MS 65, MS 66, or MS 67. Ultra-high grades, particularly MS 67 plus and MS 68, are significantly scarcer because most 1989 P quarters were produced for everyday use, not for numismatic preservation. Alongside grade, value can increase if a coin exhibits notable minting errors, such as off-center strikes, die cracks, double dies, or misaligned dies, though authentic errors must be examined by professional graders to distinguish them from post-mint damage. Beyond its monetary value, the 1989 P quarter reflects a broader narrative about American coinage and the symbolic elements embedded within its design. The word liberty ties the coin to the foundational ideals of independence and personal freedom. In God We Trust expresses historical and cultural sentiments that have shaped American national identity, and E pluribus unum captures the unity and diversity of the United States as a federation of states and peoples. Although the 1989 P Washington quarter may seem like a next top